And we are live.
Wow, have you been working on that one?
I've been practicing,
It
yes.
was very, very tonal. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
I gotta work my way up to my what's his name? Greg Hamilton voice.
Yes, yes.
And we are live.
I
Like
wonder if
that.
he had a lot of pressure knowing that he was going to have to hit the because it's one thing to just continually do your regular announcing duties, but when the spotlight is put on you and you're being put on the like this is your livelihood here. I mean, a lot of pressure on this
I
guy.
would say a very underrated skill,
I
that ring
was
announcing.
Welcome everybody to the Café Hangout. I'm John Pollock along with Wai Ting. And it was funny because when we were in the media box for WrestleMania, uh, you and I ended up striking up quite the conversation with Keith Elliott Greenberg. That
Mhm.
I mean, he wrote the Superstar Billy Graham book, the Freddie Blassie book, did a lot of work back in the day with WWF Magazine. And we were chatting with him, and he remarked to me, he said, this guy Greg Hamilton is really good. So I think that this was, maybe years from now, people are going to look back at this WrestleMania as star-making weekends for Kofi Kingston and Greg Hamilton, the real stars coming out of WrestleMania weekend.
I suppose so. I think the skill in doing like a segment like he did on Thursday was like trying to find some variation of your typical ring
Yeah, he
announcement
had to build up to the last one.
that sounded different because I think a good ring announcement is not necessarily one that you notice, much like commentating and many other backstage behind the scenes roles. But he had to really make something special for Tuesday.
The
Give
WWE
props.
Network, they just put up this Tom McGee match with Ted DiBiase into their hidden gem section.
Yeah.
And they never aired this match. It was from a Wrestling Challenge taping in 1988. You want to hear the polar opposite of Greg Hamilton? Check out the ring announcing in this one.
Oh yeah.
This
Okay.
woman was so nervous. It was not stellar.
Okay. I will check that out.
So, everybody, welcome back to the show. We are back into the swing of things here at the post office. We're going to be joined momentarily by our big guest of the day, but also we will be dedicating some time to your calls later on in the show. You can dial in 732 800 4423. That's later on in the show. Plus, we will be taking Skype calls. You can search for Post Wrestling and just dial in. But without further ado, we are coming off of WrestleMania week. We can't even encapsulate it into WrestleMania weekend anymore. And one of the people who was at the forefront when it came to WrestleMania coverage through his work on the GRAPPL Spotlight podcast, he was also doing reports up at postwrestling.com. First time you and I have had a chance to speak with the man, Richard Benson, aka Benno, from the British Wrestling Experience, joining us on a Thursday night from the UK. Benno, how are you?
I'm doing very well, guys. Just about recovered from the long weekend, back into the swing of things. Yeah, feeling good. Glad to be here.
I felt that 4 days removed from WrestleMania would be okay to ask you to come on, and hopefully that you're back to your at least a semblance of sanity after. What was the grand total number of shows that you took in from last Wednesday through the end of WrestleMania week?
I'm so scared to even check the exact number, to be honest. I think it was probably at least 4 or 5 per day, and then I'd be catching up with the VOD morning after. A couple of shows, tried to be clever and just pick out, the match that was most hyped. But I really did do my best to watch everything. But there's still reviewers out there, the likes of Arm Furious of Rear Review Reviews and Ian Hamilton of BackBodyDrop.com, who were still reviewing shows today. They're still catching up with the odds and ends of shows from WrestleMania week. If that doesn't tell you how stacked it was, I don't know what else would.
It's a major grind to go through all of these shows, even trying to stay on top of it. As we were there, like very, very difficult that you just have to pick and choose. But you also have the handicap of the major time zone difference. So everything is tacking on 5 hours from the Eastern time zone. How difficult is that? Or is it something that it's just second nature to you that this is when wrestling is going to be taking place in the middle of the night into the early mornings of the hour?
Yeah, it's kind of become normal a little bit. I'm a little bit like Way in that I don't keep particular regular hours. So I'm the kind of person who's quite happy to stay up late. Although even I've got my limits. I remember there was a point last year when Joey Janela and Great Sasuke was still in the ring at 9:30 a.m. our time.
Oh, God.
And my girlfriend got out of bed after a full night's sleep and just looked at me like, "What are you doing with your life?" But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. But what makes it harder is you see, I mean, every now and then you'll see an American on Twitter or even a Canadian going, "Oh, these shows are going so late. I can't believe it's past midnight." And me and the rest of the Europeans are all fuming at Twitter going, "You don't even know the half of it." But hey, we get our get our revenge when it comes to the big New Japan shows.
How long have you been doing this, Benno, and why did you start doing it?
I'm an idiot mainly. I think the big, I think maybe 3-4 years ago when Evolve had a lot of cards over the Mania weekend. Because at one point it was just really Evolve and Ring of Honor that were running with WrestleMania. So that was kind of the first big weekend I did staying up all night. But as far as staying up all night for wrestling, full stop, yeah, for Brits it's a regular occurrence. The last Sunday of every month, pretty much. And yeah, the only time we get any reprieve is when there's a New Japan show that's on at say 7 in the morning our time, which is great. We can get out for that. But yeah, it's definitely something we're all hard in training for throughout the year.
I think it's really amazing, Benno, just that, we can remember not all that long ago. Like we're going back like 6-7 years when, you'd hear about these lineups that Ring of Honor were putting on, or the Dragon Gate USA would have shows. And there was really, iPay-per-views were still very primitive. And going back, like, could you have imagined 2006? In fact, all three of us were at the infamous Ring of Honor 6-man involving the Dragon Gate guys. But
right? Wow.
yeah, we were. I only found out about this a few weeks ago. Benno, you were there that night, so we unofficially were under one roof back in 2006.
That's it. Yeah, it was kind of at that time it was a completely different world, wasn't it? Just really Ring of Honor running across the weekend. But yeah, I came over. I remember being third row as the fans launched chairs at Colt Cabana and Homicide, and ducking for my life. That was my main memory of that weekend. But
still, my scariest live event moment was that, because I saw a dude get cracked in the back of the head with a chair as we were on the floor watching, and I was just, oh god, thought the guy was going to drop, and he just continued watching this wrestling show.
Oh yeah, the aim of the fans wasn't the best that night.
But just the idea that, like, to be able to see that weekend, you'd have to be there, and now it's the complete opposite, that you just have to cut down, like, what are the priorities for you, because there's no way anybody is watching. We had upwards of 55-60 events going on in New York and New Jersey over the course of 5 days.
That's it. And I think I spoke to Wai a little bit on Twitter, and Wai was saying how tough it is, being out there, going back and forth to different shows, listening to you guys and your podcast talking about it, where there's definitely something to be said for the likes of me being able to just sit at home and click play and watch whatever show we like. It's definitely a different world in that regard, in that you can just do that, and you can experience the weekend and experience as many shows as you like, just as long as you got the fight credit sitting there.
I found it especially tough this year, Benno, especially with the White Eagle Hall, just because it's such a packed space that if you don't get there early enough, you might not get a very good view. Whereas being at home, like you said, with a beer, maybe in your pajamas, Benno, having a perfect view every single time. Maybe let's just start off, talk about maybe some of your highlights from the weekend.
Yeah, I think all in all, I think the big highlight came from GCW. I think they, over the last few years, WrestleMania weekends have kind of become their showcase. Bloodsport, the two Joey Janela shows, the collective in general. I think GCW were the real winner. I think we could all see it going in. They were the shows that had the hype, and then it kind of came to fruition, really. I think, again, early on, it was mainly, Gabe Sapolsky shows, Evolve, that piggybacked on WrestleMania, and Ring of Honor, going further back. But this year, it felt like most of the conversation was generated around those GCW shows, and there were lots of imitators this year. Joey Ryan's Penis Party trying to do a knockoff of Janela shows to varying degrees of success. But I would say absolutely, again, yeah, GCW, just with the variety show that they put on. There's just something to be said for offering a very different product and offering something that you can't, even if people will imitate, see anywhere else.
Yeah, of the GCW, of the series of shows, I think everyone anticipated, Joey Janela's Spring Break was going to be the big party shows of the weekend, and I think they very much delivered in that sense. Bloodsport, to me, greatly improved upon the first year's show. Being in there, like, it feels like they have really hit a home run concept with Bloodsport. And of course, we had the issue with Nova Pro pulling out, and then they kind of went to the well with this interesting Orange Cassidy show. And on top of it, you had like a really serious match in Otani and Jonathan Gresham, and then the rest, it was really going to the absolute extreme with what kinds of ideas we can come up with. Neither Way or I got to see the Orange Cassidy show. So how did this come across in execution? Was this a winner, or was this one where it kind of was going to the well one too many times for GCW?
I expected that. I expected very much the latter. I thought this is a show I'm not really looking forward to watching. After watching God knows how many shows, this was one I was trying to watch on VOD morning after, and it was actually tough to motivate myself. Thinking, I mean, I love Orange Cassidy, but I don't think I've ever seen any man wrestle more in one weekend than Orange Cassidy. I know there were wrestlers like LAX on more shows, but I felt like I saw him do his hands in the pockets routine like 6 shows in a row at that point. So I was struggling to motivate myself, and then I put it on, and again, it was a blast to watch. I don't know what it is. I think GCW, I think they get what is wanted at WrestleMania weekend. They know fans don't want, especially if you're sitting at home, you don't want a 4-hour show with a half-an-hour intermission like what WrestleCon did, and quite a few of their shows at their end did. I think they get the formula. It was 2.5 hours. It was a breeze to watch. Lots of comedy. I mean, I'm not gonna go out my way to say, oh, these are all match of the year candidates. You mentioned Gresham and Otani. That was the closest thing to it was a serious match, a good technical match on the show, but it wasn't that kind of show. I mean, there was a best 7 out of 13 falls match on the show and a 1-minute time limit match as well. I mean, if you stuck to 4 time, I would recommend people check that out. It was Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta going 1 minute, and I think we all thought going in they were going to go with a minute of roll-ups, which is pretty much what the 7 out of 13 falls match did. But instead, they kind of just stood off, threatened to lock up, didn't lock up, grabbed the ropes, threatened to lock up again, and then the minute was up. And then we got an extra 5 seconds of time where we got a roll-up finish. And you know what? That sounds absolutely ridiculous just describing it, but it really worked. And I think you need kind of that lighter touch, I think, on these shows if you're going to stand out from the noise.
It's so interesting that, like coming out of the weekend and even going into the weekend, I feel like it shows like that one and like Janela that like a lot of us were talking about and buzzing about and wanting to see. But I also think about like, hey, if a match like that was promoted in my town this week, would I go and watch it? I'm really not sure. So I think it like kind of takes this like special weekend where wrestling fans are there anyway, not necessarily to go to Orange Cassidy, is doing something, but because it happens to be there, these companies can take great chances to promote whatever they want. And more often than not, I'm more interested in the chance taking operation than something, let's say, is doing something that I'd be seeing, better versions of every single week anyway.
Yeah, that's it. And you could say the same for the, like you say, the Janela shows, like who's Invisible Man versus Invisible Stan. If that gets advertised, you might go out of curiosity, but I think there's something about having that captive Mania weekend audience that you can do stuff like that, or you can have a Dustin Thomas, no legs from the Janela show come out as a big surprise. Mantor was on that show. I can't see him being a draw, but it really works when you've got a crowd like that who are up for some fun.
It seems that the magic formula is being able to present a show where the fans believe I'm either going to see something that I have no idea what this is going to look like in execution, getting to see stars that you're typically not going to get to, such as going to a RevPro show that'll be full of your big New Japan stars and even UK talent as well. And it's the shows that are just rank and file shows that you could pinpoint in any part of the country. Those are the ones that I think those are the ones that kind of just fall by the wayside because there has to be that hook to separate you. And every year it's going to be this race to differentiate yourself. And I think Game Changer seems to certainly be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, I think they're at the front. And I think, talking to RevPro, I think RevPro delivered a very New Japan heavy show. That was a fun show. But I think of the, the promotions that came from abroad, you like to WXW and DDT, I think they got it too. I think DDT and WXW both presented products that were unique. DDT was a full DDT show with the entire roster. WXW, they had the referee out, they had the commentators out, and it was a very WXW looking card. So I think it's got to be one of the two to stand out. Either, like you say, something very, very different or something that's unique in that way that you're not, if you're an American fan or you're a traveling fan, that you might not get to see at any other point in the year.
Were you surprised at all at how quickly shows like Stardom and DDT sold out? And does this bode well for other promotions that could be out there that are looking at WrestleMania weekend in the future as ways to get themselves into a market as successfully as those ones have?
It's tough because you hear like Progress for the notable BritRes exception this year, and they'd outright said on social media, we're not going because, hotels are expensive and it's not worth our while. Now, obviously, Access was running, and whether the Progress owners and Progress roster would have the time to do NXT UK commitments as well as Progress is another thing. But I think it's that balancing act. I think I can't see, you fly out your whole DDT roster, you fly out the majority of your, or a good chunk of your WXW roster. Are you going to be making a profit? No matter how many tickets you sell, that's a lot of expense. The best example of it going wrong is IPW UK, who flew out, who aren't really a very well-known British promotion anymore. They go back years. There's lots of history there, but they flew out, and I believe they drew 15 people. Was the report that I read.
And that was with British icon James Storm on the show too.
There you go. Yeah, you had that there, and some IPW UK originals too, the likes of Jimmy Havoc on that show, and it didn't draw. And you just wonder about the bath that a promotion like IPW UK must have taken to come out and say, oh well, we did the show in New York. So that's kind of the cautionary tale, I would say.
I've got to say though, like beyond that show, and I'm sure there were others like that, but I would say like the majority of the shows, like the ones we went to, seemed like full. WrestleCon's US versus the World show, like that's on a Saturday morning at 11 a.m. And I've got to guess there were about 800 people or so there on a Saturday morning. It seemed that there was a very healthy appetite for wrestling, but there are going to be casualties on a weekend like this when you're talking upwards of 60 cards as well.
Yeah, of course. I think that's always going to be a problem.
I wanted to chat a bit about the ROH New Japan card from Saturday night at Madison Square Garden, because you had the perspective of watching this at home. To contrast, Wai and I have gone over kind of the live experience of it, but as an experiment, and in terms of what New Japan and conversely Ring of Honor got out of it, because I think that can be very, very distinct things, because it seemed that there were two shows competing and different conclusions people made of where these promotions are now that the Madison Square Garden show is in the rearview mirror, and it's time to what is next in this relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching this live, following along on Twitter, and we've all got our Twitter bubble, but my Twitter bubble of people I'm following, it was just wall-to-wall criticism of Ring of Honor and what they were presenting. And I've got to say, I'm on that side as well. I mean, I was up late watching it, and a long show is probably the toughest thing to do, at 2-3 in the morning. But yeah, I think Ring of Honor had the entire world watching, the biggest show that they've ever done, might ever do, and they chose it to present, Enzo Amore and that long Bully Ray angle, and the women's match that didn't really go anywhere, that then led to the beautiful people turning up. Just lots of really bad booking. There was some good booking there. What they did with having Dalton Castle turn heel and losing to Roosh in a few seconds. Although that was a wise move, but every other decision it felt like Ring of Honor made on this card was just, for me, again, at least in my bubble, just met with derision. And I think it had, like you guys said, I think it had a real effect on the card. I think the strongest things on the card were by far, you said, there's a show of two halves. The big New Japan matches, all pretty much to a man delivered. Then even, the matches like Zack Sabre Jr., Hiroshi Tanahashi took place in front of a wall of what felt like, both in the live crowd, people checking the phones to find out what had actually happened with Enzo and Cass, and people like me at home who were distracted by the show, that the actual just nonsense of people going back and forth trying to work out whether it was a work or a shoot. It just felt like, Ring of Honor really shot themselves in the foot again on the biggest stage. And even when it comes down to their big matches, Matt Taven going over in that ladder match, I mean, it doesn't really fill you with excitement, at least for me, for the future of Ring of Honor. And it does, maybe purely from a creative point of view, make you wonder what New Japan think of their relationship with Ring of Honor at this moment.
I think it's a real identity crisis now that Ring of Honor has, and you can see this kind of competing idea of what we're trying to do, because I think that forever, you could talk about what drew at Madison Square Garden. Like, you can debate whatever point you want. Now it's time for that proof, because if Ring of Honor believes that it was their brand, their stars that were a major part of this, well, now you have to go out. The Garden's over, and now you have to draw with this roster that you've assembled. And I think that there's an acknowledgement that they need to be bringing in other names that people are going to be familiar with. And I think that that's maybe on paper, that sounds like a great idea, but we've seen TNA go down that route of, hey, recognizable names. That's got to bring eyeballs, and that's not always the case. So the next 6 months to me are very critical for Ring of Honor, because you don't want to look back 6 months from now and this Garden show was a distant memory and you're going back to just running your same level and haven't gotten anything significant out of what this show was meant to be.
Oh, definitely. And I think, yeah, it's a bad read of the room more than anything. I mean, it worries you if the people making decisions behind Ring of Honor thought that Madison Square Garden card were going to go crazy for the beautiful people coming out, or we're going to be enamored by them doing a shoot angle with Enzo Amore. It was quite clear from watching the show at home what the crowd wanted was mainly the big New Japan stars, and you saw that in the Rambo before with the reaction the New Japan guys got, as opposed to the likes of Kenny King coming out there. I think it was just a bad read of the room. I think Ring of Honor fans, although it's a bigger promotion than it used to be, it's always been based on the in-ring matches like Will Ospreay and Jeff Cobb, which was half a Ring of Honor match, is what I perceive Ring of Honor fans want. Ring of Honor fans want, not some of the crazy angles that we got on this night. It was just for me, a really bad read of the room by Ring of Honor's creative.
I want to ask you, Benno, for some of your highlights from the weekend. First of all, your favorite show of the entire week.
It's tough because I think, being honest, I think Ring of Honor had the Naito Ibushi match, and I think NXT had a lot of match of the weekend contenders. But we were talking about this on my GRAPPL Spotlight podcast. I don't really consider those shows of the weekend. I think for me, as far as overall packages go, like we said earlier, it was the Bloodsports of the world. It was the Joey Janela show. I think WXW had a decent show. DDT was a really fun show as well. But yeah, I can't help but go back to the GCW stuff. I think as far as start to finish shows, I don't think I had a better time watching a show than watching Joey Janela Part 1. Even if, Ring of Honor, New Japan, for its faults, had some better matches. And even if, NXT was one of the better takeovers with, you could really pick any of those matches depending on your tastes and say it was the match of the weekend, and I wouldn't argue with you too much. But yeah, as far as actually having fun start to finish, it was the Janela shows. It was watching the Rock and Roll Express hit Canadian destroyers and getting to see NWO Sting and all those silly things. Like in 6 months, they'll be the shows I'll be talking about rather than the individual great matches we maybe got from elsewhere.
And maybe even a show you would go back and rewatch. Like there's something to be said for sure coming out of this weekend about like shows being way too long, and it's not just about WrestleMania, but the G1 card suffering from that same criticism as well. Now, how about your favorite match?
I think that's tough. I mean, an individual match, maybe Ibushi Naito. I'd probably give it a shout out to Bandido and Will Ospreay from WrestleCon. From the pure indie shows, I felt like that was the strongest match we got. David Starr and Lucky Kid on WXW was really strong. If only, I mean, I would definitely say, even if you don't get to see that match, check out the David Starr promo afterwards, where he's running down Walter for running away to WWE and talking about the John Oliver controversy. It just nobody blends reality like David Starr does these days on the indies, so that's worth checking out for that. But yeah, if you push me, I'd probably still go with Ibushi Naito, but it's just with so much on offer as far as choice goes from the indies, I wouldn't argue too hard if people said something else.
How about the idea of putting the Walter title change or title win over Pete Dunne onto a takeover proper in front of that big audience? And could you see NXT UK being able to sustain their own show WrestleMania week if there was the time for it? Like that would maybe have to be an afternoon show, and that could cater very well to the UK market as well. Because I feel that there is demand to see that talent beyond going to access matches.
Definitely. I mean, Will Cooling's been very vocal about this, and speaking to him, and his idea has always been, well, hang on, if you're running these access shows, surely with all the shows going on the weekend, if random indies can draw a crowd, if no disrespect to them, but if a Blackcraft can come in and draw a crowd, why a WWE not just take a small building somewhere and run NXT UK there, run these international shows that they're doing somewhere else, and actually have a crowd with life. Because you guys probably know, and listeners to British Wrestling Experience probably know, that NXT UK TV show week to week can be a tough watch, at least in my opinion. And I think
once you get through the theme song, I think that's the biggest hurdle right there. I watched that show. That song is in my damn head for like 24 hours afterwards, and it's just the worst.
Oh, They really need to change that thing. But yeah, it's a show that without having takeovers to aim for, I think it struggles a little bit. I think losing Walter and Pete Dunne to an NXT takeover proper makes sense to do. I understand the business reasons behind it, but it leaves the rest of the TV with not much to aim for. And if you combine that with a dead access crowd, a crowd of people who are going to be trying to get a photo with a wrestler and they happen to be wandering past the show and happen to watch it, that just makes for the worst product overall. So yeah, if I love all the indies running WrestleMania weekend, but yeah, if WWE were to tap into that and run some smaller venues and get some harder core fans in, I think it would definitely improve things across the board.
Last thing here, in terms of WrestleMania itself, do you think that the presentation of WrestleMania needs to change? Do you think it works as this current 7.5 hour presentation? What would you like to see change, or is it just this is the way that WrestleMania is going to be presented itself on the Sunday?
I think it's WrestleMania, so you can get away with a certain amount. I think I personally, I'm split. I think for me personally, I don't mind a big long WrestleMania. It's the biggest show of the year. It makes sense to me watching at home, but I think it was clear from this year's show you can't get away with it going that long. Even that there are limits, and when the crowd are sitting on the hands for Roman Reigns v Drew McIntyre or Kurt Angle's retirement match, that second half of the card really struggled, and I think a lot of it was because the crowd was so quiet, and the crowd were quiet because they were tired. At least that's what it felt like watching at home. And that big reaction that Daniel Bryan and Kofi Kingston got, I think it probably would have got it anywhere else on the show. But the fact that it came 3.5 hours into the show, that's when your main event should be. So it makes sense that it got the loudest reaction. And unfortunately, for the likes of Becky Lynch, once you got to the very end of the show, the crowd reactions just weren't that loud anymore. And I think wrestling fans were gluttons for punishment. We're going to come back. People, even the people who unfortunately were stuck in the rain after midnight, trying to get themselves home. I could imagine a lot of them still going to go back. It's still WrestleMania. WWE know they can push it with fans. But yeah, there is a limit at some point, and I'm one of those people who throw a vote in for either a 2-day WrestleMania or for making it shorter. But I just worry what I wish for, because if I said, oh yeah, do a 2-day WrestleMania, they're going to come back and it's going to be 2 6-hour shows rather than 1 7-hour show. So maybe we should be careful what we wish for there.
One last thing, Benno. Just wanted to get your vote for best performer of the weekend.
That's a tough one. All in all, I mean, in ring, Will Ospreay had a couple, of my favorite matches as far as a weekend goes. I would probably say, LAX were the Marathon Men. They were on pretty much every show that I saw. It felt like. So yeah, I'd probably say one of those two acts. I think in general, as far as people standing out, it was the likes of Jungle Boy on the Janela show. I think he really stood out as a young guy who's not been seen by a lot of crowds before. So I think that's important. But yeah, I'll probably just about go with Will Ospreay, even if there were wrestlers out there that featured a lot more times over the weekend.
Well, Benno, your coverage was awesome throughout all of WrestleMania week, including on our site. I mean, it was a great help to us that you could share your thoughts, getting to see so much. And please let the listeners know where they can hear you on multiple sites out there. You are a man in high demand.
Thanks. Yeah, you can listen to the British Wrestling Experience every Wednesday right here on postwrestling.com. You can also listen to my GRAPPL Spotlight show, which is every Monday, grapple.podbean.com, where we tackle the world of wrestling in maybe longer form than people might be used to hearing me on post. But yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Just want to also say thanks, guys, for having me on. Been a fan of you guys since the beginning, so very proud to be part of this website, and it was a real honor coming on.
Hey, it's our pleasure, Benno. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll definitely do this again sometime soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Benno.
Thanks a lot, Benno. Now Benno can get some sleep after WrestleMania.
Hopefully. What time is it over there? Oh, it's
nice. It's this show is very much tuned to the UK crowd out there, which we have quite a lot of listeners in.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
I'm still trying to catch up on some rest, to be honest with you. I kind of find my body still pretty sluggish and all over the place. I unfortunately, I missed the lunch meeting yesterday just because my schedule was just completely messed up, and the guy's just like, hey man, are you I've been waiting here for like half an hour, are you okay? That's the worst.
Oh, that's
really
the
bad.
worst.
Yeah. That is the worst. I would say I'm still trying to mentally get back into the swing of things. How about you?
I'm actually pretty good. I think that having a 1-year-old is great training for these erratic sleeping
it's like
schedules.
It's a great alarm that sets itself, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's you never know when the alarm's going to go off.
It's the best.
It may go off multiple times
Yeah.
throughout the evening. So yeah, you're just always prepared.
Just getting back to like WrestleMania weekend, do you have any intentions of watching any of the other matches that took place that we didn't get to see?
Yeah, we discussed it. I think next week on the double shot, we're going to cover Spring Break. I think we're going to split them up. I'm going to watch the second night. You're going to watch the first night. The match I really want to track down and watch is Will Ospreay and Bandito, because I heard nothing but tremendous praise for that match as one of the best of the entire weekend. So that's the one I certainly want to check out. And maybe this is ambitious, but I want to try and rewatch some of the Takeover show, because I would like to go back and watch that with commentary and just watch it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think we've had a big discussion about the live experience versus, watching on TV. And that was something I was trying to really like think about this weekend, not just with Takeover, but with like the G1 show and WrestleMania, just sitting around like a various types of people. Like in the case of WrestleMania, having multiple viewpoints from various parts of the arena, just to see like how that might have affected my experience. And it does, certainly. But, good wrestling shines through no matter what. So yeah, I intend on watching a lot of the GCW shows that Benno was recommending. Actually, the first half of Bloodsport I haven't even watched yet, so I want to catch that. Orange Cassidy show, which people in our chat room, Eric says was his favorite match all weekend. I will go back and check out as well.
Yeah, I mean the show did sell out, and it seemed that the concept, I guess I heard mixed reports on Orange Cassidy, so
definitely
I think it was one of those shows that was going to have extreme opinions in both directions.
Those are the most interesting shows I find, include as well as DDT coming to America.
Yeah, that sounded like a really fun show. Braden went to that show, seemed like he had a great time. So let's go through some news, because there was quite a bit of it today. I guess the big one involves Road Dogg, Brian James, who is no longer one of the co-head writers on SmackDown. And the story came out on Wednesday night. Dave Meltzer reported this. Mike Johnson also reporting on this news. And Ryan Satin has an update confirming that James is still with the company. And in his report, making it more of a mutual decision that he's going to be placed into a yet to be disclosed role. It could end up being the role that Arn Anderson had. So it seems like he's staying with the company, but no longer the head writer. So you're getting kind of a variety of, reasons. Was this a contentious one? Was this not? But I mean, that position, it is a real pressure cooker. And there's a lot of big personalities now in that writer's room. And I think that certainly it's a very, very pressure-filled job that ultimately comes down to someone in Vince McMahon that can make snap decisions. Not to say that that's 100% the case here, but like that's the situation. And it's amazing when people last as long as they do, like an Ed Koskey, for instance, who's been there since 2001.
I can't see anybody wanting that job as head writer of either of these brands under a WWE banner. It just it seems, like when you do things well, you don't necessarily get that much praise, but when you don't do things well, you can tend to get probably way too much criticism than you deserve. And I mean, like I can honestly say, watching back at the last year of SmackDown, it's been a consistently good show, I would say.
I think most weeks it's very rare you have a SmackDown that you come out of it just like shaking your head or not. Like it's got a certain and it's pretty much like it's a lot of the same writers on the shows, but clearly you do get a different execution on Tuesday versus Monday. And a big deal is having that one less hour. I think that's I think Raw, 2 hours of Raw, I think would be a pretty good show most weeks.
Maybe. But whether it's that or whether it's like this current actual roster, something made SmackDown far better than Raw this year. And I mean, you just look at what leading into WrestleMania, it was Raw, a SmackDown storylines or a SmackDown characters between Becky Lynch and Kofi Kingston that to me were like the real standouts of WWE this year. So I mean, by all accounts, he seemed to do a good job. So I'm perhaps leaving this position has to do with factors beyond maybe performance.
Robert Evans turned out to be the writer that was attached to that story that Sean Waltman shared about Vince's name being mentioned during the Bret Hart induction speech. This is a former independent wrestler, R.D. Evans, who you'll remember from Ring of Honor and other independents. Now, he has since come out stating that he quit and was not fired. So,
well, it might have been one of those, like, you can't fire me, I quit situations.
That's, I was asking around, and that's kind of what it was kind of described to me as being, but I'm still trying to get all of the facts of that particular story. But in any event, he's done with the company. So
I didn't even know he was with the company.
He had been there since about 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, so he had been there. That's a pretty long time for the lifespan of a WWE writer. So that's the latest there. What else do we have here? NWA, I want to mention this. They are presenting their Crockett Cup tag tournament on April the 27th. And I want to read the brackets to you, for this tag tournament. First of all, it's going to feature Nick Aldis and Marty Scurll for the NWA title, Jazz against Allison Kay, the former Sienna, for the women's title, and Willie Mack versus Colt Cabana for the national title. And then they're going to do their one-night Crockett Cup tournament. So you've got Crimson and Jax Dane against the winners of a wild card battle royal they'll do that night. Flip Gordon and Bandito representing Ring of Honor against CMLL's Stuka Jr. and Guerrero Maya Jr. From New Japan, Yuji Nagata and Satoshi Kojima against PCO and Brody King, meaning we will see Yuji Nagata and PCO in a ring together.
That'll be fun.
And then the Briscoe brothers versus the Rock and Roll Express.
That'll be fun too. Look at the Rock and Roll Express.
I'll be honest, when they announced this Crockett Cup tag tournament, I was expecting, like, yeah, you'll get some ROH flavor. It's going to be a lot of like undiscovered local tag teams in the US. I think this looks like a really fun tournament.
I really like the variety.
Like Yuji Nagata and Ricky Morton are in the same tournament and could end up in a match together, potentially.
Yeah, I think a bunch of solid names. And I think even throwing somebody like the Rock and Roll Express in there I would say plays towards some of the, perhaps the creativity and maybe chance-taking, risk-taking, flavor of some of these WrestleMania weekend shows.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of a cool little lineup that they have going as well. What else do we have here? We have a call, actually.
Oh, we do.
We want to go to one.
Hello, Jake. How you doing?
Doing great, man. John and Wai, thanks for the great content over the weekend. Hope you guys had a great trip this past weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. How did you enjoy it?
Man, I got to say, I watched a lot of events on Fight TV, and it really is the Netflix of wrestling. I mean, Bloodsport was great, Rev Pro was great, obviously WrestleCon. So, man, a lot of content over the past weekend, even watching at home.
Any streaming issues or any technical issues that you might have ran into?
Not necessarily on Fight TV. It was fine on that, but there were some buffering issues during the G1. For New Japan World for a little bit for a couple instances, but overall it was a great turnout and great production values for those events as well.
I think Fight is in a very good spot because as much as all of these companies can still go ahead with their streaming deals, and this is just an added avenue to make money off of, because you're not going to see any of these companies try and go to traditional pay-per-view. That this is almost for people that aren't willing to get the streaming service, it's at least an option. And for a weekend like this, it might be worth it for people there's still people that I feel want to buy an individual show versus signing up for a subscription service, even though there's a big cost savings with the service.
It's so interesting how, in the past, streaming seemed to be an option for people who couldn't get onto pay-per-view, with pay-per-view being the ultimate goal. Now, pay-per-view basically doesn't exist, and even the people who used to do pay-per-view are going towards streaming.
Jake, did you get the bundle package that Fight offered? Because that was a pretty good deal. You could spend something like $125 and it included a huge show, a huge series of shows.
I did. I had the WrestleCon bundle, is also the GCW bundle, which is a really good deal if you consider it. All the events turned out to be great. It was well worth the money, but now, as of right now, saving my money as of right now. But it was well worth it.
Cool. Any pick for match of the weekend that stands out for you, or show of the weekend?
Johnny Gargano versus Adam Cole from a match of the weekend, and that NXT Takeover card was just spectacular. If you would ask me to rank the top three, if you don't the top three, I would say Takeover and then G1 and obviously WrestleMania, even though it was too long. But those would be my top three rankings there.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for the call, Jake, and hopefully you enjoyed all of the many shows that came out over the past week.
I appreciate it, guys. Have a great week.
Thanks, Jake. You too. SmackDown on Tuesday night, it did 2,199,000 viewers coming off of WrestleMania. So this was a 26% drop from last year's SmackDown. Falls in line with Raw. Raw had the basketball game. SmackDown did not have, any significant competition. So I think that those are really serious numbers to consider and look at, that this amount of drop year over year for the company. SmackDown, I would say, would maybe even be more alarming because you don't even have any built-in excuse.
Ahead of the shakeup next week, I wonder how much, I'm sure trends like this would have already played a part into it. But, next week's shakeup, you're going to see a lot of the pieces fall in place for, the Fox move to come later on in September. So what could they do?
I'm kind of skeptical of how big the audience is going to be next week for these two shows. Like, I think they'll be up, maybe even up from this past week, but I don't know how invested people are in, like, there's no significance of going from one brand to the other. I think they've really trivialized it, that now when you're going to this card and playing it, that I don't know how much people are invested in it. There's very few performers that I think it'll be, oh, wow, that guy's going to Raw. Like, it's AJ Styles. Like, you've seen so much crossover that I don't know if it's going to have the impact like last year's shows did, where they were big numbers that the company did. And ultimately, that I think we'll get a good sense of what SmackDown is going to look like. But as we've seen in the last few months, I don't think there's anything stopping them from, as they get closer to Fox, that they'll throw a ton of the Raw guys onto that Fox show to build it up if they feel that pressure, which I imagine they will.
Yeah, it's that. I think next week you might start to see some returns, like in the form of people like a Bray Wyatt.
I wonder if those vignettes will run for a little bit.
Maybe.
Who was it that? Oh man, it was someone in the U.S. It was David Bixenspan, and it was the vignette, and he wrote, "Ed the Sock is coming to Raw," and I was just amazed that Ed the Sock is a reference that crosses the Canadian border into the U.S.
You look like, he's a sock puppet.
Yeah,
right.
So I would see most Americans, I would assume, would just go to like Comic, the insult comic dog, but Ed the Sock, the originator, no one tops Ed the Sock.
Right. Yeah.
Ed the Sock, I think, would be an awesome wrestling manager.
I think he's brilliant. Now the trick is to walk him out to the ring. How would you do that? I think there's some beef there probably between
Ed the Sock and Comic, or
What's
Triumph.
Triumph.
What was I calling him? Comic, the insult comic dog. Triumph.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, he absolutely believes that they ripped him off because he was supposed to go on Conan O'Brien's show, and then they ended up not booking him. And a while later, they introduced this Triumph.
That's the match I want.
So that's the all-time. Yeah, where would it take place though? It would have to be
under a table.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but what else do you expect for next week?
I think maybe some NXT call-ups, like one or two. I think you will start to see if they still have any intentions of pushing people like Nikki Cross, like EC3
and Drake Maverick together.
Perhaps. I think you will start to see some fresh starts finally for some of those people. WrestleMania has been a real holding pattern for many people on the roster. Certainly Ricochet and Black. I'm curious to see if they keep them as a team or if they decide to split them up.
It's a chance to split them, if you want them to go their separate ways, which wouldn't be the worst idea.
They've done a good job of establishing them,
like Black, both of them. But to me, especially right now, Aleister Black could be in a main event position tomorrow.
I'll definitely say so. Yeah, especially in terms of in-ring. I feel like they haven't necessarily given them much time to speak, know. And maybe
like a heel Black with Seth Rollins, I think would be a fantastic program to build to.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be a heel right now with the way he wrestles, but I you can easily make that transition. But more so than that, I want to hear promos from these guys. I want to hear their actual characters and have them involved in storylines, and you'll probably start to see that next week.
I won't go into spoilers from NXT because I know how people get, but we can talk about the fact Kushida debuted and he'll be on
Yeah.
TV in a few weeks. Came out as Kushida.
Yeah, I wanted to have that moment, John, where I didn't know who was coming out. And
Oh,
then all of
they
a sudden
told
this
me he's
music.
coming to NXT, and now he's on NXT. Oh my god! Did a match with Cassius Ono, so not probably like an excellent opponent to start off with.
It seems like Cassius. I mean, he is the gatekeeper of NXT.
That is his role,
and you can always count on that. Like, I think he'll always perhaps have a job because of that reason.
I don't think that guy will. I think he'll have an agent's job as soon as he wants it.
Yeah.
I think he could be a fantastic. I know he is a fantastic commentator. I've heard him many times in the past. I think that he is, a multiple. I just think that guy has so much value that sometimes is not realized.
Absolutely.
But for guys that are coming in, what a great person to be paired with.
How about this? The fact that he is facing Cassius Ohno suggests he's going to be a lot more than just a cruiserweight. I mean, the fact that he's on NXT alone is enough of that. But I mean, it tells me they have serious plans for this guy to be in the main event scene as a heavyweight.
Yeah, maybe he should have been endorsed by Bret Hart and being given the glasses for the Back to the Future entrance.
Right? Yeah,
that could have been his. I mean, he's got the Canadian heritage with the Tim Hortons connection.
Didn't he train out there?
He trained, but like in
Calgary or something?
Not in Calgary, but in Windsor with
Windsor.
Alex Shelley.
Right.
So that, and then he had the Tim Hortons gimmick that he would wear the T-shirt and be an honorary Canadian. So there's backstory to all of this.
Sure.
I was wondering if he'd regain his first name, unlike others who lose their first names, because he got the exact treatment in New Japan where he unfortunately was one too many Yujiros.
Maybe they'll just switch it up and just go by first name instead of last. That'd be weird.
Yeah.
Do you think that he keeps the Back to the Future thing? I guess he has.
He came out with it on Wednesday, so it seems like at least at this stage he'll still have that character, and then he'll get called up and he'll be Chris Ida.
Yeah, Kush.
What are you going to be doing this weekend? Are you going to take a break?
No. I have.
Are you coming over to watch UFC with me?
No, I got a ton of merch to pack.
Oh yeah, you and I are hanging out on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
What's the plan?
We're going to pack all of our Ice Cap merchandise. So all of you guys who are patrons of the Ice Cap tier and Espresso tiers, sorry about the long delay, but after WrestleMania, I can pack everything now. Hopefully, I put a lot of work into putting these together, so hopefully you guys all enjoy them. We got our tapes, we got our pins, we've got coasters, stickers, postcards that John has spent pretty much his day writing right now. So we'll be packing all of those, and I'll be making multiple trips to the post office. I think we have something like 70, 80 packages to pack, along with all the t-shirts that we sold this week, including this one, a few of which are still left. So
look at that segue.
Get them while you can. Store.postwrestling.com. Our live in New York t-shirts designed by Robert Pearson. We don't have many left, like a handful, if that.
Limited edition, legit limited edition shirts. Because once we're out, we're out. There's no more to come.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to take a minute before we sign off. I wanted to thank all the listeners that we got to meet WrestleMania weekend and that came to our live show on Sunday.
Yeah.
These days are a blur. That show's going to be out on Friday if you're a member of the Café. So you'll get a chance to listen to that. But it was so much fun.
So if you're listening to this right now in the free feed, that means it's already out on the Café feed right now. And not just audio, but video as well. It was cool, man. It was really cool. Like when John and I first set out to do this, I think we were just doing it as an experiment, not really knowing how many people would show up. Honestly, if 30 people showed up, we would have been very happy. But it was way more than that. We filled the place. So it kind of tells us that, hey, maybe there's more demand to do stuff like this in the future. And, I think what I kind of sensed was just people just wanted to see us and to interact and to meet us, after listening to us, maybe in another part of the world for such a long time. So
it was like the Orange Cassidy effect. What the hell is this show going to be like?
Yeah, that's it.
We did not have any gimmick matches though. It was awesome questions.
Yeah,
we met
we didn't know what we were going to do out there, and we also didn't throw to Photoshop pictures of old ladies like DX either. We had no prepared bits. That's for sure. Maybe we should. We should prepare some bits.
I don't think we need to.
Super soakers.
I really liked the format of our show. I think it was very, very simple.
Feedback though, I'd love to hear feedback.
Yeah,
and not the audio feedback that we got in the speaker. So apologies for that. But actual what did you think of the show if you listened?
No, I would say the show went 90% like excellent. I think.
Yeah, I
And
thought so too.
I think anytime you come away with that and you have notes to prepare for the future, and I think we are dedicated to doing more shows.
Oh, no announcement.
Let's
We'll work on it.
We need to confirm something first.
I don't know if we're supposed to say that.
Oh, are we
Oh my
not
God.
supposed to say this?
Oh, jeez.
Poster festival.
Alrighty. Thank you guys for tuning into the Café Hangout. It's fun to get back into doing live stuff. So
Yes, it's been a blast. We have some guests lined up over the next couple of weeks, so look forward to that. And yes, thank you for tuning in again. Friday, if you're a patron, you will get the Live in New York show. Saturday night, or Sunday morning, I should say, I'll be back with a UFC 236 post show. And then we started all over again on Monday with the Superstar Shakeup. Wai will be back Monday night for Rewind to Raw. So thank you to everyone for listening. You can go over to postwrestling.com. And a big thank you to Benno for joining us. Check out all his great work. The British Wrestling Experience, a new show will be out next Wednesday with Martin Bushby, and as well the GRAPPL Spotlight podcast that drops Mondays.
GRAPPL.
Yes. GRAPPL.podbean.com.
Hey, big news. Apparently, I'm the first person on GRAPPL to reach over 1,000 followers. So
1,000 followers?
I'm a big deal on GRAPPL, everybody. Puts way more pressure on my ratings. God damn.
Wow. So
Yeah.
I like that. I've avoided being the match raider. You are bestowed with that honor, Wai. So when
man.
wrestlers start getting upset, it's going to be at you and not me.
No, come on. Do not take my ratings as gospel. I think that's the point of GRAPPL. Everybody has a voice. Everybody's got
But you've got the loudest one.
I do have the loudest one, so I'm a big deal. Okay, impress me, everybody. Alrighty,
that is it. Thanks for tuning in, and we will speak with you later this week.